How does the son of America's most celebrated naval admiral end up taking his own life? How does the daughter of a man who commanded the chaos of war find peace by becoming a nun? And how does another child of this military giant choose a life of quiet academia? The four children of Admiral Chester W. Nimmitz grew up in the immense shadow of a national hero, and their life stories are a fascinating study in contrast. Each one a surprising answer to the question, what happens when your father has already conquered the world? Number 4, Katherine Vance. Cet Nimttz. She was born in 1914 in the Brooklyn Navy Yard Hospital, and by age 6 she was living out in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, where her father was tasked with building a new submarine base. Little Katherine and her siblings roamed barefoot through cow pastures to attend school at Puno in Honolulu. Imagine being a first grader exploring tropical fields because your dad's Navy job moved the family to Oahu. For Katherine, childhood meant travel and excitement, the kind of upbringing that would shape her independent spirit. An excellent student, Katherine started college at just 16, enrolling at the University of California, Berkeley. After graduating in 1934, she didn't just settle down. She sailed off to join her parents in Asia, where her father was commanding a cruiser. In 1934, at a reception in Japan, honoring a famous admiral's funeral, Katherine met a young Navy lieutenant named James Jim Lay, who was serving under her father. They hit it off immediately. Katherine later joked, "Never pass up a good funeral," because that chance meeting led to a wartime romance, by mail and eventually marriage. Indeed, Katherine and Jim Lay married in March 1945 as World War II neared its end. During the war years, Katherine was often close to the action, not on the front lines, but on the home front. She worked as a librarian in Washington, D.C., and even became chief of the music division at the public library. In December 1941, Katherine and her sister Nancy were living in an apartment just across the hall from their parents in Washington. When news of Pearl Harbor came, her father was urgently called away to take command in the Pacific. Katherine did what needed to be done. She grabbed the family's cocker spaniel Frillis and took him out for a walk to calm the nerves. As fate would have it, she strolled by the Japanese embassy where staff were hurriedly burning documents on the lawn. At that tense moment, little Freckles slipped his collar and scampered onto the pristine embassy grounds to do his business. Katherine was quick on her feet. She quipped to her family, "I have tomorrow's headline. Admiral's dog hurls defiance at Japan." That cheeky joke brought a bit of levity to a dark day. It showed Katherine's personality witty, poised, and not easily rattled. Throughout World War II, Katherine and Nancy found ways to support their father from afar. They even sent playful telegrams to congratulate him on victories. After one major naval triumph in 1944, Katherine wired a pun-filled message comparing the wind to a teetotaler finally guzzling booze. A light-hearted way to boost her dad's spirits. Clearly, Katherine had her father's sense of humor and love of wordplay. After the war, Katherine focused on building her own family and career. She and Jim Lay had 3 sons. And as a Navy wife, she moved from coast to coast during Jim's 30-year naval career. No matter where they lived, be it Washington, Rhode Island, or elsewhere, Katherine made a home and continued her passion for books as a school librarian. One proud moment came in 1972 when Katherine was invited to christen the USS Nimmitz, a massive new aircraft carrier named after her father. In Norfolk, she stood on the deck and smashed the champagne bottle to launch the ship, honoring her dad's legacy in front of thousands. It was a full-circle moment. The little girl who once walked barefoot to Pearl Harbor School had grown up to bless a ship carrying her family name. Katherine and her husband eventually retired to a peaceful life in Wellfleet, Massachusetts. In her later years, she stayed active in the local library and could often be found taking walks on the beach or enjoying an evening martini. In fact, she always made her martini with a special twist. She would raise a toast with her father's favorite Old Navy saying, "Here's to a bloody war or a sickly season." A darkly humorous nod to how officers used to get promoted either during wars or when plagues thinned the ranks. Even in her 90s, Katherine's sharp wit never left her. When the town of Wellfleet honored her as its oldest resident in 2013, gifting her the ceremonial Boston Post cane, Katherine laughed in private. "I'm not sure I want that darn thing. Everyone who gets it dies." It was her way of joking about reaching 100 years old. And reach 100 she did. Katherine Nimitz lived a full century, passing away in January 2015 at the age of 100. Number 3. Chester W. Cet Nimttz Jr. Born in 1915, just a year after Katherine Cet grew up as the namesake of a naval legend. How do you live up to a father who's a 5-star fleet admiral? For Cadet, the answer was to follow in his father's footsteps right into the United States Navy. From a young age, Cadet was inspired by his father's career. He even attended the U.S. Naval Academy at Annapolis, graduating in 1936, just as his father had dreamed. In fact, Chester Nimttz Sr. had always hoped his son would go Navy, and he did exactly that. When World War II erupted, Cet Nimttz Jr. was ready. He became a submarine commander, just like his dad had been in the earlier days of submarines. It was truly a like father, like son story. The admiral commanded giant fleets, and his son commanded a stealthy sub beneath the waves. During World War II, Cadet earned a reputation for bravery and skill under the sea. He took command of the submarine USS Hado in 1944 and led it on combat patrols in the Pacific. Imagine the pride and pressure of being Admiral Nimittz's son, fighting the same enemy your father was strategizing against. Cadet rose to the occasion. He and his crew sank several Japanese ships on their patrols, disrupting enemy supply lines. For his heroism, Chester Jr. received some of the Navy's highest honors. Navy Cross, one of the highest awards for valor in combat. Silver Stars, 3. Yes, 3 Silver Stars for multiple acts of gallantry. Bronze Star Medal, recognizing his courage and leadership under fire. By the end of World War II and into the Korean War, Cet Nimttz Jr. had proven himself as a capable naval officer in his own right, not just the admiral's son. He eventually achieved the rank of Rear Admiral before retiring from active duty in 1957. Stepping away from the Navy at only 42 years old, he embarked on a whole new career business. Chad swapped his uniform for a suit and joined the booming tech industry of the Cold War era. He worked at Texas Instruments in its early days, then moved on to become an executive at the scientific instruments company Perk and Elmer. By 1965, Chad had become the CEO and later chairman of Perk and Elmer, leading projects in high-tech manufacturing. It's almost as if he had 2 separate successful lives, one under the ocean and another in the boardroom. Few could imagine a war hero submariner turning into a corporate leader. But Chester Nimttz Jr. did it seamlessly. He also raised a family of his own with his wife Joan and their 3 daughters. In his later years, Chet enjoyed a well-earned retirement. However, time and age weren't always kind. By the turn of the 21st century, his health had deteriorated. He suffered from a chronic stomach disorder that caused significant weight loss, and he had developed congestive heart failure. His dear wife Joan had serious health problems too. She had gone completely blind. In their mid-80s, the couple found their everyday quality of life slipping away, no matter how hard they tried to keep going. Then in early 2002, Chester Nimttz Jr. made a final decision that stunned many, but was deeply personal. On January 2002, Chad and Joan ended their lives together in a planned suicide pact. He was 86 years old. They quietly overdosed on sleeping pills in their Massachusetts home, leaving behind a note that explained their reasoning. In the note, Chester Jr. wrote that they had made this decision calmly and deliberately over time because their physical illnesses had taken away the life they enjoyed. It wasn't an act of sudden despair, he emphasized, but a choice made of free will to avoid prolonged suffering. It was a heartbreaking end, but also a testament to the couple's profound bond and Chad's lifelong tendency to take charge in the face of adversity. Just as he had commanded a submarine through dangerous waters, Chester Jr. took control of his fate in the end, steering himself and his beloved wife on their final voyage. Number 2. Anna Elizabeth Nancy Nimitz. Born in 1919, unlike her father and brother, Nancy did not choose a life in the military spotlight. Instead, she pursued knowledge and carved out a quiet, impactful career in the world of research. In a family full of Navy tradition, Nancy became the scholar of the bunch. Nancy grew up in the same peripatetic Navy household as her older siblings, moving from place to place as duty called. She was just a toddler when the family lived in Hawaii, and a young girl when they spent time in Asia. As a teenager during World War II, Nancy supported the war effort from the home front alongside Katherine. She even lived with Katherine in Washington, D.C., during those tense years, helping boost her father's morale with those witty telegrams and doing what she could to contribute. After the war, MY's path took a decidedly academic turn. She earned a bachelor's degree in English literature and library science from George Washington University, then went on to get a master's in international relations at Radcliffe, the women's college associated with Harvard. Nancy was incredibly bright and driven. It was uncommon in the 1940s for a Navy admiral's daughter to dive into advanced studies of world affairs, but that's exactly what she did. By 1952, Nancy had found her calling at the famed RAND Corporation in Santa Monica, California, a think tank known for brainy analysis during the Cold War. As a RAND economist and researcher, she focused on studying the Soviet Union's agriculture and economy. Picture this. While her father had once blockaded Japan and strategized naval battles, Nancy was poring over Soviet grain production reports and national income statistics. It might not sound thrilling to some, but her research was actually quite important. She was helping America understand its new Cold War rival, the USSR, through economics. In a sense, Nancy fought on a different front line, the intellectual front, providing knowledge that policymakers could use in the tense chess match between superpowers. Nancy wasn't one for fame or fanfare. She lived a modest private life, but she did hold on to one very special keepsake from her father's naval legacy. In her yard, she mounted a hefty pair of military binoculars, aimed at a slice of the Pacific Ocean visible in the distance. These weren't just any binoculars. They had been taken from a Japanese warship and given to her by her father after World War II. Nancy loved the ocean, hardly a surprise with a Navy upbringing, and would often gaze through those binoculars at the sea and sand on the horizon. It was a daily ritual that kept her connected to both the ocean's beauty and her father's history. She spent her later years in a rustic community in Tonga, California, near the coast, but away from the hustle of city life. Friends say Nancy valued peace, nature, and ideas. She never sought the limelight. Instead, she found contentment looking out at the Pacific waves through those binoculars, reflecting on a world she had studied, but that still held mystery. In February 2004, Anna Nancy Nimitz passed away from natural causes at the age of 84 in her home overlooking the ocean. She had lived a life of the mind and the heart, contributing quietly to her country's understanding of the world, while cherishing the simple joys of a seaside sunset. Number 1. Mary Manson Nimitz. Born in 1931, over a decade younger than Nancy, and 17 years junior to Katherine, Mary's life would take perhaps the most unexpected turn of all the Nimtz children. In a family defined by military service and public duty, Mary chose a very different kind of service, a life devoted to faith. She became a Catholic nun, dedicating herself to spiritual and communal work far from any spotlight. As the youngest, Mary experienced a unique childhood. She was only 10 when World War II began. And unlike her older siblings who remembered moving to Hawaii or living in D.C., Mary spent her teen years mostly in the post-war era. She traveled with her parents to various naval postings around the world, attending schools in places as far-flung as California and even overseas. This global upbringing gave Mary a broad perspective on life. She'd seen war's aftermath up close and the rebuilding that followed. Interestingly, the Nimmitz family wasn't originally Catholic. Mary's decision to pursue a religious life began when she went off to college at Stanford University around 1949. It was there that Mary encountered the Catholic faith deeply and converted to Catholicism. This was a surprising turn for the daughter of a high-ranking naval officer. So much so that it actually made the news. Headlines in 1953 announced that Admiral Nimitz's daughter will enter convent. And indeed, not long after, Mary did just that. At age 22, she joined the Dominican Order, a community of Catholic nuns in San Rafael, California. When she took her vows, Mary received her religious name, becoming Sister Mary Nimmitz. One can imagine how startling this might have been to those who expected Mary to lead a high society life. Or perhaps marry a distinguished gentleman. Instead, she chose a life of simplicity, service, and prayer. But those who knew Mary understood that this path made sense for her. She was gentle, compassionate, and had a strong sense of purpose. In the convent, Sister Mary likely found the peace and meaning she had been seeking. For the rest of her life, Mary wore a nun's habit instead of the latest fashions. She devoted herself to teaching and charitable works through her community. Though she kept out of the public eye, Mary remained in touch with her family. Her father, Admiral Nimitz, was reportedly very supportive of her decision and proud of her commitment. After all, service can take many forms. While her father commanded fleets across the ocean, Mary chose to steer a path towards spiritual fulfillment and helping others. Sister Mary lived a quiet, humble life in the Dominican convent in San Rafael for decades. She witnessed the world change dramatically from the 1950s to the 2000s, all while keeping her faith at the center of her daily routine. In her later years, she battled cancer, and her fellow sisters cared for her as lovingly as she had cared for others. Mary Nimmitz passed away peacefully on February 27, 2006, at the age of 74, in the convent she called home. She was laid to rest in her habit, remembered as a kind soul who walked away from worldly honors to embrace a higher calling. Looking back on the lives of Admiral Chester W. Nimitz's 4 children, we see not just the stories of separate individuals, but a collective legacy shaped by the sea and a spirit of service. This legacy is evident not only in the distinguished military career of Rear Admiral Chester Nimmitz, Jr., who bravely followed in his father's footsteps aboard submarines in the heart of World War II. It also flowed through the veins of Katherine and Mary, who married naval officers and contributed silently through their role as the pillars of their families, an indispensable foundation for the strength of any military force. Even Anna Nancy Nimitz, who chose a completely different path, served her nation on another kind of battlefield, the intellectual front of the Cold War, as an expert on the Soviet economy. 4 children, 4 paths, yet all reflected a core set of values forged by their great father: responsibility, honor, and a dedication to their country. Ultimately, Admiral Nimitz's greatest legacy was not just his victory in the Pacific, but a succeeding generation that carried that spirit forward, whether on the deck of a ship, within the halls of a research institute, or at the heart of their own homes.